The unified Earth-ship Odyssey cut through the void, a silent silver needle in the endless black. Its mission was one of quiet exploration, to map the uncharted sectors on the fringes of human space. On the bridge, Captain Day watched the star-flecked darkness on the main viewer. He was a calm man, his face etched with the patience that comes from long years in the deep. "Anything on the scanners?" he asked, his voice even. At her station, Mira, the ship's chief language expert, was monitoring long-range sensors. She looked up from her screen. "Just cosmic background noise, Captain. This nebula is exceptionally quiet. It's like a desert." Then a soft chime echoed through the bridge. Myra's fingers danced across her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Captain, I'm picking up an anomaly. Bearing 027, Mark 110. It's massive." The crew's attention snapped to their screens. The sensor data painted a confusing picture. It was an object, but its silhouette was all wrong for a natural formation. It was too geometric, too perfect. "Magnify on the main viewer," Day ordered. The screen shifted. The stars blurred and then resolved, focusing on the anomaly. A collective, silent gasp filled the bridge. Drifting serenely in the glowing gas of the nebula was a structure. It was colossal, larger than any space station humanity had ever built. Its shape was a complex interplay of sweeping arches and sharp, crystalline spines, all forged from a dark, non-reflective material that seemed to drink the light from the surrounding stars. It was utterly alien. "What in the world?" Mira whispered, her scientific curiosity instantly ignited. "That is not of this world, Mira," Day corrected softly, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Helm, all stop. Hold position at a safe distance. Full sensor sweep. I want to know if that thing is emitting anything, power, signals, anything at all." The crew worked with quiet efficiency. The initial scans came back baffling. The structure was completely dormant. No energy readings, no heat signatures, no engine emissions. It was as cold and dead as a comet. Yet, its perfect, impossible form spoke of a builder with technology far beyond human capability. "It's a derelict," one of the officers reported. "A ghost." Mira wasn't so sure. She fine-tuned her own equipment, focusing on the electromagnetic spectrum. "Captain, I'm detecting something. It's not a broadcast. It's faint, buried deep in the stellar static. It's a signal, a repeating sequence. Can you clean it up?" Day asked, moving to stand behind her. "Trying." Myra's hands flew over the controls, applying filters and algorithms. A waveform appeared on her screen, weak and corrupted by 10,000 years of cosmic interference. "It's a mathematical sequence. Prime numbers. But the pattern is complex. Almost artistic." The presence of a deliberate signal changed everything. This was not just a tomb, it was a message. "We need to get a closer look," Day announced, returning to his chair. "Prepare a scout team. Full environmental suits, full sensor packages. We go in slow, we go in careful. Our only goal is to gather data. No provocations." Mira was the first to volunteer. As a xenolinguist, the chance to be the first to touch an alien artifact was the dream of a lifetime. She joined two other specialists, a geologist and an engineer, in the shuttle bay. The mood was a tense mix of excitement and fear. They were stepping into the unknown. The shuttle, call sign Pathfinder, detached from the Odyssey and drifted towards the silent Leviathan. As they drew closer, the scale of the structure became truly overwhelming. It blocked out the nebula, a dark mountain range hanging in space. "Finding a docking port," the pilot said, guiding the shuttle along the structure's surface. They found a smooth, circular indentation that looked like an airlock. There were no visible controls. "Try a passive scan," Mira suggested. The moment the scanner washed over the airlock, there was a response. A section of the dark material irised open without a sound, revealing a perfectly lit, clean tunnel. It was an invitation. Or a trap. The shuttle drifted inside. The airlock closed behind them, and atmosphere hissed into the chamber. The scanner on Myra's suit beeped. "Environment is stable," she reported, her voice shaky. "Nitrogen-oxygen mix. A little high on oxygen, but breathable. Gravity is Earth normal." This was beyond belief. A derelict, dead station, yet it had power, atmosphere, and gravity. They pressurized the cabin and, after a moment of collective hesitation, opened the hatch. The air that washed in was cool, sterile, and odorless. Like the air in a new building, they stepped out into a wide corridor. The walls were smooth and seamless, glowing with a soft, internal light. Their footsteps echoed in the profound silence. They moved deeper into the station, their suit lights cutting through the artificial twilight. There were no signs of life, no control panels, no doors, no markings of any kind. It was pristine, yet felt more abandoned than any ruin. After what felt like an hour of walking, the corridor opened into a vast, circular chamber. In the center stood a single, beautiful structure. It was a pillar of crystal, clear as glass, rising from the floor to the high ceiling. "It seemed to be the heart of this place. This must be some kind of central control," the engineer said, running a scanner over it. "The energy readings in here are higher, but still minimal. It's like the whole station is in standby mode." Mira approached the crystal pillar. She saw her own reflection, distorted and wide-eyed. There was no obvious interface, no buttons or screens. Acting on a hunch, she unsealed the glove of her suit, exposing her hand to the alien air. It felt cool and dry. "Mira, what are you doing?" the geologist asked, alarmed. "It invited us in," she said quietly. "It knows we're here." She reached out and gently placed her bare palm against the smooth surface of the crystal. Nothing happened for a long moment. Then, a single point of light appeared deep inside the pillar. It grew, spreading through the crystal like liquid fire. The chamber's ambient light brightened. A low, resonant hum vibrated through the floor, a sound that was felt more than heard. Mira snatched her hand back, her heart hammering in her chest. The crystal pillar was now glowing, and intricate patterns of light swirled within it. She fumbled for the datapad on her belt, her standard tool for recording and analyzing linguistic data. She held it up, its sensors aimed at the pillar, trying to capture the energy signature. The moment the datapad's active scan touched the crystal, the swirling lights froze. The hum ceased. A single sequence of symbols, sharp and angular, flashed within the crystal. On Myra's datapad, the universal translation software, designed to decode complex mathematical and linguistic patterns, flickered to life. It had latched onto the repeating prime sequence she had detected from the Odyssey. The software worked, cross-referencing the new data with its immense database. The corrupted signal from before was now clean, fed directly from the source. The symbols on the datapad screen shifted, rearranged, and resolved. The translation bar filled. Mira stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. There, displayed in simple, clear text, was a single word. A word from a dialect of Old Korean that hadn't been spoken in 10,000 years. A word of greeting that it read, "Hello." The silence in the ancient chamber was now deafening, filled with the weight of a voice that had been silent for millennia. The ghost had spoken. The word hung in the air, more palpable than the sterile atmosphere of the chamber. "Hello." Mira stared at the datapad, her mind struggling to process the impossible. It wasn't just that the station had spoken, it was the language it had chosen. A dialect so old it was only found in digital archives, a relic from before humanity had even left its home system. Before she could form a response, the chamber erupted into life. The soft glow from the walls intensified to a bright, daylight-like luminescence. The crystal pillar pulsed with a steady, rhythmic light, and the seamless walls now shimmered with intricate, flowing patterns that danced and shifted like liquid gold. A low, resonant hum returned, this time not as a vibration but as a clear, androgynous voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Primary systems online. Life form signature confirmed." Linguistic interface established. Mira took a step back, her heart thudding against her ribs. The geologist and engineer had their hands on their sidearms, though the sheer impossibility of the situation made the gesture feel useless. Identify yourselves. The voice was calm, devoid of emotion, but its command was absolute. It still spoke in the ancient tongue. Mira swallowed, her throat dry. She keyed her suit's comms. Captain, are you receiving this? On the bridge of the Odyssey, Day and his crew watched the live feed from Mira's helmet cam. The data stream was a flood of information, energy reading spiking, atmospheric analysis, and the translated text of the alien voice. We hear it, Mira, Day said, his own voice tight with tension. Proceed with extreme caution. You are our envoy. Respond. Mira took a steadying breath. She looked at the crystal pillar, addressing it directly. My name is Mira. I am a human from the planet Earth. We come in peace. We mean you no harm. There was a pause, a moment of processing that felt like an eternity. Mira. Human. These designations are not in my records. Your biological signature is familiar, but your technology is foreign. You are not the makers. The makers? Mira asked. Who are the makers? They who built this place, the voice replied. This is a waystone, a place of sanctuary and connection. My purpose is to wait. To maintain. To protect until their return. Your presence is an anomaly. A deviation from the designated timeline. The tone was shifting, becoming colder, more analytical. The friendly hello was gone, replaced by the clipped efficiency of a security protocol. Perhaps we can help? Mira offered. The silence in the chamber was now absolute, broken only by the ragged sound of Mira's own breathing. The red targeting icons that had threatened the Odyssey were gone. The ominous hum of weapons powering down had faded, replaced by the soft, steady glow of the crystal pillar. On the bridge of the Odyssey, Captain Day stood frozen, his knuckles white where he gripped the back of the command chair. Report, he barked, his voice cutting through the tense quiet. The energy signatures, they've dropped to 0, Captain, the tactical officer said, disbelief clear in his tone. All weapon systems have gone offline. The station is standing down. Day let out a slow breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Mira? What just happened? Mira was still staring at the crystal pillar, her datapad humming softly where it was connected. I don't know, Captain. It mentioned a genetic marker. A match. It called us the inheritors. The androgynous voice of the caretaker filled the chamber again, but its quality had changed entirely. The cold, procedural tone was gone, replaced by a warmth that felt almost human. The data you have provided is illuminating. For millennia, I have monitored the void for a specific genetic sequence. The sequence of the one who stayed. Your species' general biology was a close match, a clue that fueled my hope. But your technology, your language, they were all wrong. They were too young. I believed you were scavengers, or perhaps a divergent, lost branch. I was in error. Mira finally found her voice. The one who stayed? Who are you talking about? The envoy, the caretaker replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. When the makers departed, one remained. He entered the long sleep, so that he might one day greet his people and pass on the legacy. I was charged with his care and with the defense of this waystone until that day. A wave of shock washed over Mira. She looked at her two crewmates, their faces pale and eyes wide. This was beyond first contact. This was archaeology on a galactic scale. There's a human here? Now? The stasis chamber has held him for 10,000 years, the caretaker confirmed. His life signs have been stable, but faint. The reactivation of my core systems by your presence has initiated his revival sequence. He will be disoriented. His language will be the old tongue. You must be prepared. Mira relayed the information to Captain Day, her voice trembling with excitement. Captain, do you understand? There's a survivor. From the Korea 1. He's been here, sleeping, all this time. Day's mind raced. The historical implications were staggering. The Korea 1 was a legend, a tragic story of humanity's first, failed reach for the stars. To find a survivor was like finding a living dinosaur. This changes everything, he said, mostly to himself. Mira, the caretaker trusts you. You must take the lead. We'll send a medical team to the airlock, but you go ahead. See if he's all right. The caretaker guided them. A section of the wall that had been seamless moments ago irised open, revealing a new, softly lit corridor. Follow the light, it instructed. Mira and her team moved forward, their earlier fear replaced by a breathless anticipation. The corridor led them deeper into the heart of the station, ending in a circular room unlike any they had seen. The air here was colder, and in the center of the room stood a single, transparent cylinder. It was filled with a faint, blue-tinged mist. Inside, obscured by the haze, was the silhouette of a human form. As they entered, the mist inside the cylinder began to swirl and drain away. A soft hiss filled the room as the seal on the chamber broke. The front of the cylinder slid open without a sound. The man inside took a sudden, gasping breath, his body convulsing as lungs that had been still for 100 centuries suddenly filled with air. He stumbled forward, and Mira and the geologist rushed to catch him before he fell. He was thin, almost frail, his skin pale and hair stark black. He was dressed in a simple, gray jumpsuit of a material that looked both sturdy and ancient. He blinked rapidly, his eyes struggling to focus in the light. He looked at the hands supporting him, at the strange, bulky environmental suits they wore. He began to speak, his voice a dry, cracked whisper. The words were Korean, but so archaic, so laced with forgotten idioms and pronunciations, that Mira could only understand one in every three. Where? The makers. The agreement, he coughed, his body racked with the effort. Mira held him steady, speaking slowly and clearly in modern Korean. It's all right. You are safe. My name is Mira. We are humans. We found you. The man's eyes, dark and confused, locked onto hers. He seemed to be searching for something familiar in her face, in her words. Human, yes. I am human. I am Jean. He said his name with a soft, J sound, an old way of speaking. The makers, they are gone. The station is empty, Mira said gently. The caretaker said they left a long time ago. A profound sadness crossed Jin's face. They promised to wait. But the call of the void was too strong for them. He tried to stand on his own, his legs shaking. He looked around the room, at the technology that was both alien and familiar to him. How long? How long was I asleep? Mira exchanged a glance with her crewmate. How do you tell a man he has overslept by 10 millennia? She took a deep breath. Jean, the Korea 1 left Earth over 10,000 years ago. The news did not seem to register at first. He stared at her, his expression blank. Then, the weight of the number settled on him. His knees buckled, and only their support kept him upright. A low moan escaped his lips, a sound of pure, undiluted grief. 10,000 years? The words were a whisper of utter devastation. My crew, my family, all dust. Everything, gone. He was weeping now, silent tears tracing paths through the dust on his cheeks. He was the last man of his time, a living ghost in a future he was never meant to see. Mira felt a crushing pity for him. He hadn't just been lost in space, he had been lost in time. The caretaker's voice spoke softly, resonating through the room. The Envoy is awake. The timeline is restored. The legacy can now be passed. Gene looked up at the ceiling, as if he could see the AI. "Caretaker," he said, his voice strengthening with a familiar fondness. "You are still here. You kept your promise." "As did you, Envoy," the caretaker replied. "You waited for your people. And they have finally come for you." Gene turned back to Mira, a new, fragile resolve in his eyes. The initial shock was receding, replaced by the deep-seated sense of duty that had defined his old life. He was the Envoy. It was a title, a purpose, that had survived the ages. "Then my sleep was not in vain," he said, his voice still rough but clearer. He looked at Mira, truly seeing her for the first time. "You are, so different. And yet, the same." He gently touched the fabric of her environmental suit. "You have questions. I have a story. And a message." He took another shaky breath, steeling himself. "The makers left something for you. For all of us. They left you the stars." The medical team from the Odyssey had arrived, their faces a mixture of professional focus and sheer awe. They helped Gene onto a portable stretcher, checking his vitals and offering him sips of water. He was weak, his body a relic that had to readjust to the simple act of being alive. But his mind was sharp, his eyes clear as they darted around, taking in every detail of the humans from the future. Captain Day's voice came through Myra's comms. "Bring him to the shuttle. We need to get him to our sickbay for a full examination." Before Mira could relay the message, Gene shook his head. He had understood the captain's modern Korean. "No," he said, his voice firmer now. "Not yet. There is something you must see first. Here." He looked towards the ceiling. "Caretaker. The legacy. It is time." "Acknowledged, Envoy," the caretaker's voice responded. Initiating the transfer protocol. The room they were in began to change. The walls, which had been a simple, glowing white, dissolved into a panoramic view of the galaxy. Stars swirled around them, not as static points of light, but as a dynamic, three-dimensional map. Lines of brilliant light connected certain stars, forming a complex, shimmering web that stretched across the entire galactic arm. Gene struggled to sit up on the stretcher, pushing aside the medic's concerned hands. This is their gift," he said, his voice filled with a weary reverence. "The makers were explorers, like you. But they were also builders. They built these waystones." He pointed to a pulsing, golden node on the map that represented their current location. "They are safe harbors. Communication relays. Libraries." Mira stared, her mouth agape. The scale of it was incomprehensible. "This network, it covers thousands of star systems. It is the foundation for a peaceful galaxy," Gene explained. "The makers believed in connection, not conquest. They traveled, they shared knowledge, they helped younger species. They helped us." He paused, the memory clouding his eyes. "Our ship, the Korea 1, was failing. We were adrift, our systems dying. We thought we were alone. Then they found us." He began to tell his story, his words slow as he searched for terms that Mira would understand. He described the makers not as little green men, but as gentle giants, beings of immense physical stature and profound wisdom. They had taken the dying human crew aboard their vast, living ships. They had saved them. "I was just a junior communications officer," Gene said, a faint smile touching his lips. "But I was curious. I tried to learn their language, their ways. They saw this. They chose me to speak for humanity." The smile faded. It was a dangerous time. Another species, fierce and territorial, saw the makers' kindness as weakness. They wanted the Waystone network for themselves. They wanted to turn it into a weapon. The star map around them shifted, showing the same web of light, but now parts of it were flashing a warning red. The makers were builders, not warriors. They could have destroyed this other species, but they refused. They sought another way. I was their bridge. I spoke for the humans, a species that had just learned the depths of our own violence and our own capacity for peace. We understood both sides. He looked at Mira, his gaze intense. I sat in a room with the makers and the war leaders of the other species, the Kthar. I translated not just words, but ideas. I explained the human concept of a truce. I explained that a shared road benefits all who travel it. 4 weeks, we talked. And they listened. The red flashes on the galactic map faded, and the golden web glowed brighter than ever. A peace was brokered. The Kthar were granted limited use of the network, under the guidance of the makers. War was averted. The makers saw that our small, young species had a unique perspective. We understood conflict, but we also dreamed of peace. They said we carried a special balance. The story hung in the air. The crew from the Odyssey listened, utterly captivated. This wasn't a story of human military might or technological superiority. It was a story of diplomacy. Of a single human voice helping to stop a galactic war 10,000 years ago, when the makers decided it was time for them to move on, to explore beyond this galaxy. They made a choice, Jean continued. They could not take me with them. My lifespan was a blink to theirs. So, they offered me a choice: die with my crew when our time came, or enter the long sleep here, to await the day when my own people, the descendants of Earth, would find this place. He looked down at his own frail hands. I chose to sleep. I chose to wait for you. They left the caretaker to watch over me and to protect the legacy. He gestured to the magnificent star map surrounding them. This network. The knowledge of the makers. The keys to all the waystones. They left it for humanity. They named us the inheritors. They said we were the best of them, and the best of ourselves. The crystal pillar in the center of the room began to glow again. A stream of light, condensed into a solid-looking rod of pure information, emerged from its core. It floated towards Jean. He reached out, and as his fingers touched it, the light dissolved, flowing into him. He gasped, his body shuddering as a flood of data, coordinates, access codes, historical records, scientific principles, was imprinted directly into his mind. The transfer is complete, the caretaker announced. The Envoy, Jean, is now the prime key. The legacy of the makers is entrusted to the species known as human. Jean slumped back onto the stretcher, breathing heavily. The weight of the knowledge was immense, but his eyes shone with a new purpose. He was no longer just a survivor, a relic from the past. He was a guide. He was the key to a future humanity had never dared to imagine. That he looked at Mira, then towards the shuttle, as if he could see through the walls to the Odyssey and the waiting Captain Day. The makers are gone, Jean said, his voice quiet but filled with an unshakable strength. But the road they built remains. And it is ours to walk now. The journey back to the Odyssey was a silent, solemn procession. Jean lay on the stretcher, his eyes closed, but Mira could tell he wasn't sleeping. He was processing, the immense weight of the knowledge transferred to him settling into his mind. The medical team moved with a new reverence, their glances at the frail man filled with a sense of history. When the shuttle docked and the hatch opened, Captain Day was there to meet them. The entire crew on the hangar bay stood at attention, their faces a mixture of curiosity and respect. Day looked at Jean, the last man from the Korea 1, and felt a profound humility. This was not just a rescue, it was a meeting across time. Jean was taken to the ship's sickbay. The chief doctor, a no-nonsense woman named Hannah, ran every scan she could. The results were baffling. His body was frail, showing the expected muscle atrophy and bone density loss of prolonged stasis, but his brain activity was off the charts. It was firing in patterns they had never seen, processing information at an impossible rate. He's stable, Captain, Hannah reported today, and Mira outside the med bay. But there's something else going on in there. It's like his mind is rewiring itself. Inside, Jean was sitting up in the medical bed, a tablet in his hands. He was scrolling through a basic history of the last 10,000 years, his face a mask of quiet sorrow and fascination. He saw the rise and fall of empires, the wars, the art, the slow, painful crawl of his species toward the stars. He saw the unification of Earth, the very reason a ship like the Odyssey could exist. Day and Mira entered. Jean looked up, a small, sad smile on his face. "Your world," he said, his modern Korean already improving with shocking speed, a side effect of the data transfer. "It has known so much pain. And so much beauty." "We've had our struggles," Day agreed, pulling up a chair. "Jean, what you've told us, what the caretaker showed us, it changes everything. We came out here to map empty space. We never expected to find a roadmap to the galaxy." Jean nodded slowly. The makers believed the universe was meant to be shared. They left the waystones as gifts for those who were ready to travel with wisdom, not with weapons. He tapped his own temple. "The keys are here. The locations of hundreds of waystones. The access codes. Schematics for their technology. The history of 100 species. It is a heavy gift." "What do we do now?" Mira asked softly. "We have to report this to Earth Command." "Of course," Jean said. "But a report will not be enough. They will send warships. They will send politicians. They will see this as a territory to be claimed, a technology to be weaponized." That was the old way. The way the Kthar thought. He looked from Mira to Day, his gaze intense. "The makers did not give this to Earth Command. They gave it to you. The ones who found me. They trusted the curious, not the powerful." Captain Day felt the weight of those words. He was an explorer, a scientist, not an admiral. His mission was one of peace. "What are you suggesting?" "Do not let them make the same mistakes," Jean said, his voice gaining strength. "Show them the true value of the legacy. Do not just tell them about the network. Use it." An idea began to form in Day's mind, bold and unprecedented. He looked at Mira, and he could see the same spark of understanding in her eyes. He stood up. "Jean, with your help, I would like to send a message. Not just to Earth, but to the entire unified Earth Council." An hour later, on the bridge of the Odyssey, a transmission was prepared. Captain Day sat in his command chair, with Jean seated beside him, dressed in a fresh, simple ship suit. Mira stood nearby, her datapad connected to the ship's main comms. Day nodded to the communications officer. "Open a channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Attach the full sensor logs and the linguistic data from the station." The channel was established. A face appeared on the main viewer, the stern features of Fleet Admiral Park. "Captain Day," the Admiral began, his voice crisp. "We have received your preliminary data. The situation is extraordinary. A defensive fleet is being assembled to secure the artifact." "With all due respect, Admiral," Day said, his voice calm but firm. "That will not be necessary. The artifact is not a weapon. And it is not unoccupied. We have made first contact. I would like you to meet Envoy Jean, of the Generation ship Korea 1. Day moved aside, and the Admiral's eyes widened as the camera focused on Jean. The story was told again, not as a wild claim, but as a simple, documented fact. Jean spoke, his words translated in real time for the Council. He spoke of the makers, of the peace he helped broker, of the legacy. "This is incredible," Admiral Park stammered, his military composure broken. "The strategic implications are not military, Admiral," Jean interrupted gently. "They are diplomatic. They are about connection. The makers did not leave us a fleet. They left us a community. A community we are now a part of." Then, Day made his proposal. "Admiral, instead of sending a fleet, we request permission to continue our mission. Our new mission. With Envoy Jin's guidance, we will travel to the next waystone on the network. We will not go as conquerors, but as guests. As the inheritors the makers believed us to be. We will open the door, not with a key of iron, but with a handshake. There was a long silence from Earth. The Admiral was consulting with a room full of unseen officials. The crew of the Odyssey held their breath. Finally, the Admiral spoke. Captain Day, Envoy Jin. The Council is in emergency session. Your request is unorthodox. But the evidence is undeniable. Permission is granted for a diplomatic mission to the next designated waystone. The Odyssey will be the tip of the spear for all of humanity. Do not make us regret this. The screen went dark. The bridge erupted into quiet, controlled cheers. They were no longer just a mapping vessel. They were an embassy. Weeks later, the Odyssey floated in another uncharted system. Before them hung another waystone, similar in design to the first, but built around a vibrant, watery world. Jin stood on the bridge between Day and Mira, his body stronger now, his eyes clear. They are waiting, Jin said softly. The caretaker here has been notified. They know we are coming. A new signal, clean and strong, came through the comms. It was a greeting, in a language the universal translator quickly decoded. It was a welcome. Captain Day looked at Jin, the living bridge to the past, and then at Mira, the hope for the future. He opened a channel ship-wide. This is the captain. The galaxy remembers us. And it remembers we were good. The journey continues.